This is the Freeman Report with James Freeman on today's News Talk, TNT Radio.
It certainly is the Freeman Report, and I am James Freeman. I'm delighted to be welcoming James Peck to the Freeman Report. Hello, James.
Hello, good morning.
James, thank you for coming on the show. Obviously, we're going to talk about farming today. You have your own farm that you're the managing director of. I wonder if that's probably the place to start, actually, if you tell us about your farms and some of the issues that are facing you.
We farm just outside Cambridge by about 3 miles in the main wheat belt area of England. We're farming 12,500 acres or 5,000 hectares. We always talk in acres because it sounds bigger. But we've got 28 members of staff full-time, another 20 members which come during the seasonal period, which for us is sort of July, August, September. We've built a business since 2003 when I started PX Farms from scratch. And effectively, we've been on a sort of progression of growth because that's the direction in which we've been told to go in, and diversified as we've gone along. And now we've found ourselves in a situation that England's obviously left Europe. The European counterparts, they're still receiving subsidy, which they get to effectively put cheap food on the shelves. The UK has the taps turned off, and we're down to sort of 25% of what it was. And we're having imports coming in from Europe and other countries, which we're struggling to compete with. And farming is really now in a very difficult time. And I think unless there's some change, there will be businesses in the next 3 years going out of business. And 49% of farmers are now saying that they don't know if they'll be in business next year. And we've got just over 30% of farmers have left the industry since 2001. When the government organisation DEFRA was set up, which was basically the beginning of the focus away from production agriculture, putting food on the plate and into the stores and going down the environmental route. And now it's buy net gain, and we're talking about carbon, and it's all focused away from food production. That seems to be what the core of the issue is.
Yeah, I mean, I have got farmers in the family, James, so I do know some of the issues. And I know that farmers, like a lot of other people in society, get extremely frustrated with politicians and with Westminster, because they're forever fiddling around with all of the, the subsidies and the regulations. And I think the accusation is they just have got no idea of the real issues faced by farmers. James, what is the solution to this, do you think?
Well, farming is generational. So, of course, I'm one of the third generation. The fourth generation started in farming, and that's how I ended up in farming. But there are many families, we'll go back to Doomsday, etc. So farming's been in the blood, and there's been a business line that they've kept going. The issue now that we have is that people are actually, the age of farmers are sort of above 70. There's a natural sort of change that's going to happen. The government has had a swing. So effectively, we used to be on a system that you'd get £100 an acre of subsidy to effectively to farm and produce food, etc., which went back to the to people, buying cheap food on the shelves. They've changed that now, where that's gone down to effectively £25. Now they brought out some new schemes, and the new schemes are called SFI, and they're encouraging people to not farm. So just to put it into perspective, we ran through the numbers last week, and if we went on the SFI and got out of farming in the activity of growing food, we would be 4 times more profitable than we are today. And actually today of this year, we're losing money. So it would be better for me not to farm. And that is the issue, where we are. But if I get out, we won't be going back in. And that will be the case for so many. But the opportunity that normally would happen is people would naturally retire. Somebody would take the business on, whether it's a young person or whether it's a business like ours, and we'd grow, and then we employ people and the system works. Now there's an opportunity for them to actually go into a new scheme, put the land into environmental, take the money, and not contribute at all to producing food.
James, what you're telling me is absolute craziness as far as I can see, because We already are not self-sufficient in our food in the UK. We need to import lots. The prospect of us importing even more and maybe really struggling to get the amount of food we need just seems crazy to me. You as a farmer, do you think the politicians get this? Because it sounds like they're incentivizing the whole system to go down that road. Do you think this is confusion by the politicians, and that, those politicians which are captured by the net zero narrative? Or do you think this is actually a concerted effort and this is exactly what they're trying to do?
I desperately want to farm, and I want there to be a future for generations after me. But currently, at the moment, we've obviously seen sort of troubled waters over the last 20 years in farming, and the focus, the swing of change. But I've never seen anything quite like this, where effectively, if I want to continue farming, it's to the detriment of 4 times the profit. And I can't compete currently with that. So, and we'll be one of the larger farmers in the area. The fundamental problems are that farmers are only getting 1 pence in the pound. So it's not a case of whether the food is the right price, etc. It's actually what the farmer's receiving in line with actually what the public are paying in the supermarkets. I mean, Tesco's, for example, last year reported 2.7 billion profit. Well, I mean, that's extraordinary when you've got farms up and down the country which aren't making profit, or they're not really paying themselves. If they were to put, say, minimum wage into related to the hours they did, in terms of what the amount of work they're doing, their businesses would be losing money hand over fist. It seems we've lost direction. Food production is predominantly why I am a farmer, and I'm proud to produce food, and I'm proud that is my contribution to the public and being part of society. And whenever there's a Fred, who would you put on a Noah's Ark if you had to, choose? And the first two are always a doctor and a farmer. So people recognize how important the role of a farmer is. And it's a very natural thing growing food, actually, in terms of farming. It's a real base survival, type of life. And most farmers, they want to produce food. That's their role. The environment gets looked after separately, as it always has done, because every farmer wants to make sure whatever they hand over is in better condition than when they got it. But nowadays, the government seems to have a complete focus on not farming, and which I think food security should be the highest priority, especially with the amount of wars and unsettlement we've got around the world going on now, even more so. But yet they've come out in January, beginning of January. Steve Barclay went to the Oxford Farming Conference, effectively raised the amount of money that you could be paid to put your land into environmental schemes out of production. The net effect of this, of course, is you've got landowners now which are looking at terminating tenancies with farmers so that they can then put the land into these environmental schemes and take the money, which is greater than the rent that they receive from the tenants. So this industry is going to change shape dramatically quickly. And you only have to look across Europe. We've got people now up in arms, with tractors blockading, etc., because there is such a disjointed what the role of a farmer is and what they're expecting us to do. I mean, it's in the Times newspaper today. Every day there's now something on farming.
Yeah, and the problem, or the real risk, I think, James, I'm sure you'd agree with this, is I was reading this morning, the average age across the UK of a farmer is now 59. Of course, a lot of farmers are a lot older than that. But the real danger here is if we lose these skills, they're not just skills that you can just start up again once we realize there's a crisis, are there? These are skills passed down from the generations. Lots of farms have been in families for, Gareth Wyn-Jones was on the show last week, and his family farm has been in the family for over 300 years. So these skills aren't the kind of skills we can just snap our fingers and get back. Now, it was interesting you mentioned Tesco there, because I wonder how much a bit of a problem you think the supermarkets are, because, I think they are a wider problem, because on the one hand, they're not even paying their staff enough wages, so that they have to claim working tax benefits. So the taxpayer is actually subsidizing the dividends that Tesco is paying to its shareholders. But at the same time, they're also squeezing farmers like you. We obviously live in a capitalist system where market forces prevail, but this is a problem and it's got to be sorted, hasn't it? What do you think the answer to that problem is, James?
Well, the supermarkets, I mean, we all shop in them, and we all have done. But of course, if you look at them, they came along. There was high streets which were full of the grocer, the baker, the butcher, etc. And people went there. The supermarket came along, put all of that under one roof, etc. And the high streets have now emptied. They've closed. You've got boarded up shops, or you've got charity shops or gambling shops in there, and they've killed the high street. And effectively, you know, that if anybody has had anything to do with a supermarket, they probably haven't got anything pleasant to say about them. They've been a necessity evil for farming because, of course, they buy in bulk, and they've allowed growers to grow their business, etc., and supply them. But actually, in turn, what they've done is they've eroded all of the margins of what the farmer would get paid. They then said, well, we want to go to an open book policy. Let's look at what it costs you to do, and then we'll give you, 1p, for example, or a couple of percent on what it's costing. That's no way to carry on in a business. You can't run a business like that, working on the historic foundation of left to by previous generations.
Do you think there's a commercial answer to this problem in that, obviously we've heard about farmers markets, farmers farms. I mean, obviously that can only solve part of the problem because, of course, the supermarkets are huge, in terms of their footfall and their ability to serve the whole population. But do you think there is an answer in there somewhere, encouraging the public to buy direct from farms? Or do you think how much of a solution do you think that is? Is that just a very, very small part of the solution, or could that be a larger part of the solution?
I think it's a lovely idea, and I've got friends which have cattle and things, and they do go to farmers market, and they've done it, and they're managing to get a better premium. But the reality is, for somebody like me, is I'm growing wheat, and if I grow 30,000 tons of milling wheat, the public aren't going to come and buy the wheat and then start grinding it up in a kitchen to make flour, etc. So that model doesn't work for me. But for the smaller producers, it's got a role. Effectively, I think at the moment what they've got to do is we are competing with Europe, and we've got a twofold problem. Firstly, we've got standards which have been put onto the UK farmer we're having to adhere to, and they're quite costly, etc. But then they're importing on lower standards. So there's the unlevel playing field, which is the one of the main issues that farmers have a problem with, is that we're pricing ourselves out of the marketplace. Secondly, I think the government needs to go back to what was historically there with Europe. While we've got Europe is also subsidising the farmers, and we need to go to the £100 an acre model. And until a better system is put in place, and there are a lot of great ideas of what we could do, but it can't be done overnight. And I think sometimes it's about resetting back to what we had 2-3 years ago, and then coming up for a better idea moving forward.
So it is the subsidies, I think, is the big picture solution, which you're talking about, both because farms need that help. Is there anything, do you think, I'm going to come back to this issue with the supermarkets, because I think it is important, though. Do you think the government could or should do anything to regulate price at all? Or do you think the solution is all actually in the subsidies that farmers get?
I personally don't want to have a subsidised business. I don't want subsidy coming into the business. The difficulty is we're an island and we're competing against Europe. And of course, while they're all being subsidised, just cutting us off from that system and then introducing a system that pays people not to farm, of course, then everybody's going to have to go down that route because they're going to financially have no choice, or they're going to go bankrupt. Because the businesses which are pushed on in the last sort of 20, 30 years, they've probably got quite big borrowings. They've taken on a lot of extra land. They're looking after a lot of people. And they've got big responsibilities. And farming's quite a big network. I mean, it doesn't just stretch, behind the farm gate. It is looking after the fuel companies, the tyre companies, the engineers, the building trade, etc. It touches a lot of people in its activities of growth and day-to-day farming. I think the only reason I say we've got to go down a subsidy route is because currently that they don't have a model to compete with outside of Europe.
Well, listen, James, sadly we've run out of time, but I'm definitely going to get you back on the show if that's okay. Really, really interesting, your thoughts today. Thank you for what you're doing, by the way, putting the food on all of our tables. Farmers are incredibly important. I think it really is time for the politicians to wake up to this back to front system that we've got in the UK, where farmers are being encouraged actually to leave farming right at the time when actually we need more farmers. Ladies and gentlemen, James Peck, thank you so much. James, like I said, I'll be in touch and hopefully we can get you back on at some point in the future.
All the best. Thank you.
Right. Okay. Please go out and make some noise for our farmers on social media and get those politicians listening. And don't go anywhere. Stay with us right here on TNT.